Second wide line. Omar Rebbe. Okay, so yesterday we spoke about the pain, suffering. Yesterday and a couple of days ago, we spoke about the pain and suffering that was suffered by Rabbi Lozer of Reb Shimon. Now we talk about the pain, the Yisurim, the afflictions suffered by Rebbe. Omar Rebbe says, Chavivim Yisurim. Afflictions are a good thing. They cleanse a person from his sin. Sekibel Tracer Shni. He accepted upon himself 13 years of afflictions. Shis Bitsmirta. 6 of them with what seems to be what do they call this? I can't remember. Kidney stone, maybe something like that. V'sheva b'tzparno, and another 7 years with a toothache. But Amrullah, and some say Shiva b'tzmirta, it was 7 years with the toothache, with these stones. V'shis b'tzfarno, and 6 years with the toothache. The Gemara says Rebbe's pain was so much that Ahur Rairei debei Rebbe. Ahur Rairei is the guy who managed Rebbe's horse stables. Says part of managing his horse stables, he got to keep the manure of the horses. And because Rebbe had so many horses, Hava Atir Mishvur Malka, the Ahuraire, the horse manager, was wealthier than the king of Shvur Malka. When he would give food to the animals, have also kala betilsa mili, the noise would travel 3 mil. It's what is it, about 1.5 miles, 2 miles. Have mechaven the Rami bahi shaited the ayal Rebbe basically say. Now, because Rebbe had these, I don't know if it's kidney stones or some other form of stone that affects the urinary tract. So he would feed the animals at the moment that Rebbe would need to go to the bathroom to relieve himself, because he was in such pain. Rebbe was in such pain going to passing urine that it would be heard even amongst the stampede of the horses stampeding to get the food. And the captains of ships that were at a distance, they would hear the sound of Rebbe's horses being fed, and also Rebbe going to the bathroom at the same time. Despite this intense pain that Rebbe suffered, the afflictions of Rabbi Lozer Shimon we saw about yesterday, they were on a higher spiritual plane than that of Rebbe. Why? The Ilu Rabbi Lozer Shimon me'ava bo u'me'ava holchim. Rabbi Lozer Shimon accepted those afflictions with love, and he dispatched them with love. We explained every night he would invite them back, and every day he'd send them away. And therefore, his afflictions were at a higher level, because Rebbe's afflictions, the Rebbe Adei Maisa Bov, Adei Maisa Holchu, they came because of a story, and they left because of a story. What was the story? Adei Maisa Bov, because of a story they came. Mahi, what's the story? There was a calf that was being brought to be slaughtered. The animal went ahead and took its head and sort of stuck it into Rebbe's coat, to sort of as a way to ask Rebbe for protection. I guess somehow the animal realized it was being taken to slaughter, and it sort of cuddled up with Rebbe, to be protected. The kabachi, apparently the animal was crying. Amar lei, so Rebbe says, Zil, you have to go to be slaughtered. Lekach netzarta, you're created to be slaughtered. So Amri, in heaven they said, because he does not evoke compassion even for an animal, then he should have to deal with afflictions, and he had to deal with these 2 afflictions. One of these urinary tract stones, maybe kidney stones, and the other was the toothache. Because of a story they left. What was the story? One day have kakinsha amsa the Rebbe. Now, if you remember throughout Talmud, these amsa, these maidservants of Rebbe, were quite impressive personalities. Let's just say that. Okay, they were running around and they were how do you say this? They were very confidently telling the sages of the time exactly what to do, what different words meant. In one case, they actually kicked the scholar because he wasn't behaving. So these are no ordinary people. One of them was cleaning the house. She found a nest with a bunch of baby rats, and she was sort of sweeping them in to throw them out or something. So Amr Law, so Rebbe witnessed this, and he said, "Shifkinu ksiv rachman kol masav," let them be. God has compassion on all His creatures. Amri hayol merachim nirachim Allah. Because Rebbe's having compassion here on a bunch of baby rats, so therefore we will have compassion on him as well. Okay, kulu shnei yisuri Rabbi Elazar. All the years of Rabbi Elazar's affliction, leishachav inish blaze mani. There was nobody that died before their time. In other words, the suffering, the penalty of anyone who was supposed to die young was suffered by Rabbi Elazar, and nobody needed to die young. This is part of a concept which shows up throughout Talmud, which is that the righteous are able to protect not only themselves but the people around them from punishments. Okay, so Kulu Shani di Rebbe, Shnei Yisur di Rebbe, all the years of Rebbe's afflictions, like Itzrich Alma Lemitra, the world did not need rain. The Amar Rabbi of Shiloh said, Kash Yom Lemitra Ki Yom Dina. A day of rain is like a day of judgment. If I remember correctly, I believe the reason for this is because it could rain. 1 second. Yeah. Because it stops people from doing work. So it's just like the Yom Din, the day of judgment here, refers to the Mondays and Thursdays, where there used to be like a market day, and people weren't able to work. They would sort of, they'd go to the marketplace and sort of trade in that way. So in other words, having rain is difficult. It takes people away from being able to do work. So therefore, in the days of Rebbe, there was no need for any rain. And a Meimer said, "Ilav tzarach la'alma, bo rabbanan rachman u'mevatlei." If not for the fact that the world needs rain, the rabbis would have considered making a decree that there should be no more rain. Afilu hachi, but despite the fact that it didn't rain for at least 13 years, akri pugla mi mishra, when a radish was uprooted from the garden, have a kaima bira malya maya, there would be left behind sort of a hole of water, meaning the water table was very high up, there was plenty of water, and things grew like regular, there was no hunger. Okay. Ikla Rebbe la'asid Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. Rebbe traveled to the town of Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. So this is a sort of a cure of enterprise. Rebbe was trying to make sure that the children of the scholars would themselves be great people. But unfortunately, it didn't seem that way. Amr Lois, he asked around, he said, Yeshle ben Lois Tzaddik. Now remember, Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon's father, of course, is Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, who we will be celebrating on Sunday, like Weimer. So he says, is there a child here, the son of this great scholar Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, the grandson of Reb Shimon ben Yochai? So Amr Loi, they said, yeah, Yeshloi, there is one. However, not so fast. The kol zoinish and iskaris b'shnayim, any prostitute that's hired for 2 coins, sechrosei b'shmoina, those prostitutes will hire him for 8 coins. He's so attractive and so desirable, and apparently this is what he was spending his life doing. So Asis Rebbe came into town. He summoned him. Asmachei Rebbe. He called him a scholar. He demanded that he be treated with respect like a scholar. The Ashlam Reb Shimon ben Isi ben Lekunya achos achud imei, and he handed him over to Reb Shimon ben Isi ben Lekunya. He was the brother of this son's mother. So in effect, he went to study by his uncle. Every day he used to tell his uncle, I'd like to go back to what I was doing. He told him back, we're going to make you into a scholar. The Gulsa the Dava Parasualach. And we'll put you on a cloak of gold. Is that how you translate Gulsa? Yeah, okay. A Gulsa Dava seems to be some sort of cape or some sort of shirt that was worn. That was a sort of a gold shirt. It was considered a very honorable garment to wear. The Rebbe Karloch, and we call you a scholar. And you say that you want. What was that?
A gold garment.
Gold garment. Okay. And you're saying that you want to go back to the town and engage in the behavior you were doing in the past. Amarlei. So at some point he said, "Mumi azuva do." I promise that I will abandon my past lifestyle. Kigodol, when he got older, or maybe when he matured. Also matured as a scholar. Also Yosef Mesifta the Rebbe. He went and joined the study hall of Rebbe. Shami Lekole. Rebbe, I guess, at some point heard him talking to somebody else, and he heard his voice. And Amar, he said, "Hakala Dami Lekol Rabbi Elazar Shimon." This person sounds like the voice of Rabbi Elazar Shimon. Amar Le Bray, his son said to him, Amar Le, the students told him, Brehu, it's his son. Kariyallah, so he pronounced upon him the following verse: Pri Tzadik, the fruit of the righteous, Eitz Chaim is a tree of life. V'leikach nefashos, and one who takes souls, Chacham is wise. Pri Tzadik Eitz Chaim, the son of the righteous, is a tree of life. Zer Rabbi Yosi Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. This is Rabbi Yosi, that son who was initially off in bad ways. His name was Rabbi Yosi. And this is an example of the fruit of the righteous becoming a tree of life. And the one who takes souls is wise. This was the uncle of Rabbi Yosi that taught him Torah and brought him back to the right path. When Rabbi Yosi ben Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon died, they brought him to Miron, to the same place where Rabbi Elazar is buried and Rabbi Shimon's buried. There was a snake that coiled itself up at the entrance to the cave. They said to the snake, remove your mouth from your tail so we can bring the son to the father. The snake refused to move. The people of the nation thought that was because Rabbi Yosi was not at the same level as Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. But a heavenly voice rang out of the Amra, and it said, it's not because he's less worthy. Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon both were in the cave for 13 years, and Rabbi Yosi was not in the cave. He did not suffer that much, and therefore he can't be buried with them. A similar story. Ikla Rebbe la'asidir of Tarfon. Rebbe went to the town of Reb Tarfon. Amr lahu yesh ben. He asked around, does Reb Tarfon have a son? To this righteous person, Shem Kapech Hasbanov. The reason why Rebbe was concerned is because Reb Tarfon would often swear by the life of his children. And obviously, a person shouldn't swear, and definitely shouldn't swear by the life of his children, even if he's saying the truth. And therefore, Rebbe was concerned that maybe he would no longer have any children. So Amr Lahu, Amr Loi, they said to him, Ben En Loi, he doesn't have any sons. However, Ben Bas Yeshloi, he does have a son of a daughter, a granddaughter. And same story, this guy is out and about, not doing the right thing. Kol Zenish and Eskeres B'Shnayim, any prostitute hired for 2 coins, Sechrose B'Shmoina would hire him for 8 coins. Because again, he was extremely attractive. Asiyul Kameh, so they brought him in front of Rebbe. Amar Lei, Rebbe says to him, if you turn around and start behaving and start studying Torah, I'll give you my daughter to marry. So he stopped with this behavior and he started studying Torah. Some say some say they got married, but then he divorced her. And we'll see why in a moment. Some say he did not end up marrying her. So people shouldn't say that because of Rebbe's daughter, he turned his back on his ways. Now I just have to note again that remember Rish Lakish did end up marrying Rabbi Yechanan's daughter, so much that when Rish Lakish died, right, we said that Rabbi Yechanan's daughter, Rabbi Yechanan's sister, came to Rabbi Yechanan to plead with him not to be upset over Rish Lakish, so that Rish Lakish shouldn't die. Evidently, they stayed married for quite a while. But over here, the grandson of Reb Tarfon did not end up staying married or didn't marry her in the first place. One second. The Rebbe Lamalei Kulehai. Why was Rebbe, traveling around town finding boys that are extremely attractive, that are hanging out too much with girls, and these obviously the children of righteous. Why was that the focus of his time? So the Gemara explains the Amr of Yehudah, Amr Rav. Yehudah says the name of Rav. But Amrilon, some say Amr of Chibar Rabba, Amr of Yechanan. Some say it's Rav Chibar Rabba in the name of Yechanan. But Amrilon, some say Amr Rav Shmuel Bar Nachmani, Amr Be'enisan. Kollel es ben Chaver Torah, Zoicha v'Yoshev v'Yeshiva Shamala. Somebody who teaches the son of his friend Torah merits sitting in God's yeshiva, so to speak, in God's study hall. Shenemar, as the verse states, Im Toshav, if you return, va'ashivcha, and in other words, if you engage in the process of returning my sons to me, va'ashivcha, and they return to me, lefanai tamad, you will stand in front of me, meaning you'll stand within the presence of God's study hall. We call him Malamed, it's ben Amaoritz Torah. If somebody teaches the son of an Amaoritz, of a simpleton Torah, even if God makes an evil decree against a person, God will negate it on his behalf. Shenemar, as the verse states, if you take out the precious from the simple, the shaf. Meaning, when you bring a Talmud Chacham out from someone whose father is an ignoramus, Kefitia, my mouth, like his mouth, will be my command. Meaning, God says my gezeras, my decrees, will be according to what this person's mouth says. If he negates it, God will negate his decrees. Amr Parnach Amr Yechanan. Parnach says the name of Rabbi Yechanan. Kol shu Talmud Chacham u'bnei Talmud Chacham. If somebody is a scholar and his child is a scholar, uben b'nei Talmud Chacham, and his grandson's a scholar, shuv ein Torah b'sekes mizaroi, Torah will not leave his children, lo'olam, forever. Shenemar, as the verse states, v'ani zayis berisi, this is my treaty with you, lo yamushu mipicha u'mipi zaracha u'mipi zaracha, it will not leave from your mouth, from the mouth of your child, or from the mouth of your grandchild. Amar Hashem me'at v'ad olam, God says from now until forever. My Amar Hashem, what does it mean that God says? Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu ani orav l'cha b'davar zeh. God says, I promise I will be the guarantor in this area. My me'at v'ad olam, what does it mean from now until forever? Amar Yirmiyah mikan ve'elach, from then onward, Torah machzeres al achsani shelo, the Torah always goes back to its host. If a person and his son and his grandson make themselves a host for Torah, and the Torah will return to its host. Okay, I would have to point out here, of course, the flip side of the coin, which is Gemara in Adorim, which is the Gemara says, why is it that the children of scholars are not scholars? And the Gemara explains that there is sort of a natural incentive for the children of scholars not to be scholars. So therefore, the 3 generations is no simple matter. It's not so easy for one to be a scholar and ensure that his generation, the generation following, would all be scholars. Shalach Rav Yosef Yosef Arbot Tanisa. Rav Yosef fasted 40 days to make sure that his sons would be scholars. V'akrayu, and he saw in a dream, Lo yamushu mipicha. God promised him, you will always be a scholar. So Yosef Arbom Tanisa Achrona, he sat another 40 days of fasting. V'akrayu, and he saw in a dream the verse, Lo yamushu mipicha mipizaracha. God promising him that Torah would not leave him or his children. Yosef Mea Tanisa Achrona, he fasted for another 100 days. Also, V'akrayu, Lo yamushu mipicha mipizaracha mipizaracha. He saw in the dream where God promises him the Torah will not leave you, your children, or your grandchildren. He said, I'm not concerned about ensuring my great-grandchildren because the Torah will return to its hosts. Rav Zera, when Rav Zera traveled to Eretz Yisrael, he fasted 100 fast days. Why was this? To forget the Bavli Gemara. So obviously what we're learning now is Talmud Bavli. He's traveling to Israel. He wanted to learn Talmud Yerushalmi. So he prayed to God to forget Talmud Bavli so that he should be able to learn anew with that freshness and the Latin word of tabula rusa, the clean slate that he would have when he approached Talmud Yerushalmi. And this is because Talmud Bavli has much more of a complex process than Talmud Yerushalmi. As Rashi explains, Talmud Yerushalmi is much more it's much more based with rayas, with proofs, where the scholars supported each other in discovering the truth, as opposed to Bavli, which tends to be a back and forth that at each conclusion negates the previous. So he didn't want to come in with this this type of discussion method, when the method of learning was a little bit different. So he asked God to forget all his previous exposure to Talmud Bavli. Yosef Me'achronisa, then he said another 100 fast days, Lishkev Rabbi Elazar Bishnel, so that Rabbi Elazar should not die while he's alive, because he knew that if Rabbi Elazar died when he's alive, v'nafal ilu yamila d'tzibura, and he will have to take care of the public affairs. This is a common thing. Many scholars, once they get to a certain age and a certain level of responsibility or maturity, they have to accept public responsibility, which takes them away from their learning. Most notably, a famous example of this was Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Zecher Tzadik Levracha. Toward the end of his life, he had to take significant amount of communal responsibilities, which he hated because he loved learning and he wasn't interested in doing communal responsibilities. But it's not a person's choice, and when a person's called to it, he has to step up to it, and therefore Rabbi Elazar. Okay, sorry for interruption. Okay, so where were we? So he would sit in the fire and he would not get burned. Yom Echad, second to bottom line of 85a, fourth word on the line. Yom Echad, one day, Haviyov be'Rabbanon Einav ve'Echrechu. One day there was a scholar peeking through the door, and that was enough for him to get burnt. Even though he was worthy not to be burnt by a fire, he was not worthy that others should see it, and therefore he was burnt. The Kollel, from that day on, they would call him Kotan Charach Saki, the short one that has burnt feet. He was apparently Rav Zera was short. Amar Yehudah Amar Rav. Yehudah says the name of Rav. This the verse states. Okay, that's a little bit of background. The context here is the verse is trying to explain why the temple was destroyed. Now you'd think that there are a lot of obvious reasons why the temple would be destroyed, but read the verse closely. Mia Isha Chacham, who's the wise person? V'yaven Ezais, and he understands this. Vasher diber pi Hashem elav v'yagida, and that God spoke to him and he was able to understand, meaning his own wisdom couldn't get him to the conclusion. Only God's revelation. Al ma of the haaretz. Why were the Jews kicked out of Eretz Yisrael? Why was the land destroyed? Davar zeh, the reason for this. Amru chachamim v'loi pershua. Amru neviim v'loi pershua. Asher pirsha HaKadosh Baruch Hu ba'atzmai. Scholars were trying to figure it out, and prophets were trying to figure out the word of God, but nobody could figure out until God specifically told them exactly what the problem was. Shenemar, as the verse states, "V'yomer Hashem," and God said, "Al ozvam es terasi," because they've abandoned my Torah learning. Asher nasati lefneim, that I've given before them. Now, it would seem here that sort of question about which temple this is referring to. It seems that the destruction of the first temple was quite clear. The prophets clearly specify that there was rampant idol worship and immorality and even murder. Regardless, the commentators ask exactly why this was such a significant question that nobody was able to figure out. But God explained it's because they've abandoned my Torah. Now, you'd think that if they abandoned the Torah, then the scholars would be familiar with that. So it must have been sort of a nuanced point the scholars weren't so familiar with. So Rabbi Yehudah Marav explains, Rabbi Yehudah Marav, fourth line of 85b, Pehem Beis. Rabbi Yehudah Marav, Shalei Berach B'Torah Tchila, they forgot to make a blessing before studying Torah. That was sort of a subtle sign of disrespect. And that was why all the scholars could not figure out why the land was destroyed, even though people were studying Torah. Amr of Chama says, "Ma'idasiv." This that the verse states, "Believe novain tenuach chachamim ubekerav ksilim tivada." Okay, let's explain. Believe novain tenuach chachma. In a understanding heart will rest wisdom. What does that mean? Zet talmid chacham and talmid chacham. This is a scholar, the son of a scholar. So he has that understanding heart from his father, and he's able to acquire wisdom, which will stay with him. 1 second. Uvikerev ksilim tivada, and amongst ksilim, the common folk, the ksil is a scoffer. Tivada, it will be revealed. Zet talmid chacham ben amaris. This is a scholar, the son of a commoner, someone who's not familiar with Torah. Amr Ula says, this is why people say istera beligina kish karya. Okay. In other words, there is more greatness to a scholar, the son of a commoner, than a scholar, the son of a scholar. And as Ula explains, when you have an empty, people go around with a pushka, the empty pushka makes a lot more noise. It looks like it's a much greater revelation, even though it's empty. It's only 1 or 2 coins in it. Whereas the full pushka, which is half full, doesn't make as much noise. And the point here is that it looks very, very impressive for a scholar to be the son of a commoner, but typically it's not as full of a container as a scholar, the son of a scholar, even though the contrast is much greater. Amr lei Rav Yirmi Rav Zera, Rav Yirmi sister of Zera, Maidel Siv, Kotten Gadol Shamhu, the Eved Chavshi Me'adoinav. I believe the context here is referring to the world to come. It says that a young person and an adult will be there, child and adult will be there. The Eved Chavshi Me'adoinav, and a slave freed from his master. The Gemara says, Adolei Adina the Kotten Gadol Shamhu. Obviously, young people and old people will be in the world to come. So what does it mean? Somebody who humbles himself over Torah study in this world, he becomes an adult and he becomes mature in the world to come. And somebody who makes himself a slave to Torah study in this world, like all of you are doing every day. He becomes a free man to the world to come. And by the way, I mean this quite literally, because if you remember what we saw 2 days ago was that a worker, paid laborer, does not wake up before sunrise. right? He gets to awaken at sunrise and then leave to work. And all of you are waking up every day, at least half a year before sunrise. Okay. It's what it means to become a slave to Torah study. Now, you'll be free man in the world to come. Rish Lakish would go around and he would make signs, make symbols. He would mark the grave sites. Basically, he would mark where the grave exactly was, so that people do not, Kohanim specifically, don't step over these grave sites. It doesn't just mean to put up a tombstone here. What it means is actually to mark the area of the grave. Okay, so then he came to the tombstone, or to the grave site of Rav Chia. He could not figure out where it was. He felt there was some sort of heavenly impediment that would not allow him to find that grave site, and he felt empty because of it, as if he wasn't worthy, like he's working so hard to fulfill God's command, and God is sort of hiding from him the location of Rav Chia. So Omar, he said, did I not study Torah just like Rav Chia? So Gemara says, Yatsa Baskal, a heavenly voice rang out, and it says, Torah Kamaisa Papalta. It's true that you study Torah like him. However, Torah Kamaisa Le Rivatsta, but you did not spread Torah like the story, like Rav Chia. This is a famous story. We saw this Gemara back in the end of Ksubis, Daf Kuf somewhere. What was it? Kuf Gimel on the base. What was the story? Rav Chanina and Rav Chia got into a disagreement, and each one of them was trying to buttress their character as a way of making an argument from authority. So this is how it went. Rav Chanina says to Rav Chia, "You think you could disagree with me? Chas v'shalom, if God forbid, I can, if the Torah was forgotten, I can bring it all back from my ability to discuss Torah back and forth." You think you're arguing with, you know who you're arguing with? Not you. You're saying this theoretically that you're able to bring back Torah. The Avdi the Torah del Dishtach from Yisrael. I actually fulfilled the ability that Torah was not forgotten, because there was a town where Torah was forgotten, and I brought it back. What was the story? What did I do? A zilna v'shadina kisna. I started from scratch. I started by planting flax plants, the gadilna, and they grew flax. And then the gadilna nishve, I wove them into threads, into traps. V'tzaydona tavi, I trapped deer. I slaughtered the deer. Umachilna b'Israel yasmi, I took the flesh of the deer. I fed it to the poor. V'arichna megilta v'kasivna chamisha chumshi, and I took the hides and I wrote the entire Torah out on the hides. I took a bunch of hides and made 5 different scrolls, 1 scroll for each book of the Torah. V'salikna lamasa, I went to town, umakrina chamishi yanuke, and I found 5 children and I taught each of them 1 book. B'chamisha chumshi, each child got a different book. Umasnina shita yanuke shisha sidri. Then I found 6 kids and I taught each of the 6 kids 1 of the books of the Mishnah. There are 6 books to the Mishnah. When I said to them, before I return, go ahead, all of you, and teach each other what you learned, so that all of you will know all 5 books of Torah and all 6 books of Mishnah. And I actually fulfilled that Torah should not be forgotten. And Rebbe, this is what Rebbe said. How great are the actions of Chia? Rav Chia was a contemporary of Rebbe, so he called him as a friend. He called him by his first name, Chia. Amr B'Shmuel Rabbi Yossi, so Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Rabbi Yossi, another contemporary of Rebbe, said to him, "Afilu mimar, even from your actions," because Rebbe was notable for his actions. He was notable for devoting his actions in service to God. Amr, he said, yeah. He said, "Afilu mi'aba, even from your father, Reb Shimon ben Elazar." Reb Shimon Gamliel, I'm sorry. No, my father's actions were much greater. Okay. I'll continue for another minute. Amr of Zera. Zera says, Emesh nirali Rav Yossi Reb Chanina. Last night I had a dream where Rav Yossi Reb Chanina came to me in a dream. That was Rav Yossi, the son of Rav Chanina that we just saw. Rav Chanina again was the one disagreeing with Rav Chia. So Rav Yossi, the son of Rav Chanina, comes to Rav Zera in a dream. Like who is your contemporary up there in the world to come? He said to me, Eitz Rav Yechanan, next to Rav Yechanan. So he said, Rav Yechanan Eitz me. Who's Rav Yechanan next to? So Gemara says Eitz Rav Yanai, next to Rav Yanai. Rav Yanai Eitz me, and who's Rav Yanai next to? Eitz Rav Chanina, near Rav Chanina. Rav Chanina Eitz me. Who's Rav Chanina next to? Eitz Rav Chia, next to Rav Chia. Amarti Rav Yechanan Eitz Rav Chia Lai. Why is Rav Yechanan not next to Rav Chia directly? Why is there a whole chain of scholars in between them? Amrlis explained to me, Ba'aser is Kuka Nura Ubu'ur and Esha Man Ba'ayal Bar Nafkla Taman. In a place of fire and burning burning torches and fire, who's going to bring Rav Yechanan to the level of Rav Chia? Meaning Rav Yechanan was not on the level of Rav Chia. Okay, we'll stop here. Okay, have a great